On a cold, dreary afternoon, my family are taking me to the cinema to see the classic Disney movie, Bolt. A tear-jerking story of friendship and love. Before the rain starts, I waddle inside while my parents are buying the tickets. I grab my popcorn and take my seat as the theatre lights begin to fade. And now, complete darkness. All figures in the room are now obscured by the big black. That's when I see the trailer starting to roll. Embroidered letters animate on screen with worn antique colours. Something strange begins to happen. My expression becomes less bored and more focused, intrigued and disturbed. It continues. The grey, miserable visuals that compound with plastic yellows and uncanny stop-motion movement. Then, I see the buttons for eyes. The trailer comes to its close. And for the rest of the day, I'm unable to think about anything else. I had just witnessed the trailer for Coraline. I was genuinely shaken up by what happened. I mean, I went to see a film about a funny white dog and his classic little hamster sidekick, and instead I ended up leaving with grade 4 brain trauma. Of course I had to watch Coraline when it came out on DVD. At this point my morbid curiosity got the best of me. I put in the DVD, and I had to stop 5 minutes in. I couldn't even look at the screen without clenching my eyes shut. I hung my head in shame like the absolute bar baby I was and gave up. This didn't stop me though. I'd watched the trailer over and over again. I even looked at the Wii Games box art loads too. Is the game good? It's pretty good. It got to the point where my family would joke about how afraid I was. Thanks, Mum and Dad, for threatening to sew button eyes on me if I didn't eat my spaghetti. That definitely didn't fuck me up in any goddamn way. Why be so fucking hard, dude? It took me a few years and a painful, awkward puberty to pluck up the courage and actually sit down to watch the film in full, eventually watching it again down the line for the purpose of this video, and I enjoyed it quite a lot actually. The voice acting is surprisingly great, with people like Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders being cast, but the definite highlight is the animation being done by Studio Laika. Initially the film was going to be live action, but I'm relieved to say that this never actually came to fruition. So much of the story hinges on the absurd, character designs are bizarre and drastically change throughout the story. Colour palettes constantly flip, while the uncanny nature of stop motion provides a whole other layer of quirkiness to it all. This wouldn't necessarily be impossible to recreate in live action, but you'd lose so much in translation that you might as well make an entirely different movie. As a movie experience, I can wholeheartedly recommend it. Just be warned that it still has a few fucked up moments in it if you're also an 8-year-old baby. Anyway, that's Coraline. We're not done yet. Coraline does contain horror. I would be misleading you by calling it a horror movie. That being said, it is surprising to see just how much they got away with in the context of its rating. You have to ask yourself on where you draw the line before it becomes too much to handle, especially for a family audience. Let's rephrase that into something meaningful for the purpose of this video. How did Coraline ride this line in the first place? How did it get here? Well, in order to answer that, we'll have to let ourselves go back to the year 2002 and talk about the Coraline novella. The book itself is quite short, only spanning around 46 pages in total, and somehow contains much more graphic content when compared to the 90-minute runtime of the film. When comparing both, there's a clear divide made. The book relies on what I like to call concrete horror. Concrete meaning something that is directly tangible, a common example in the book being straight-up gore. I know it sounds like a stretch, but the book does contain dying animals, and characters that gruesomely rot away while others become insect-like, some being depicted as larval, malformed, and unfinished. The other father gradually starts to decay over the course of the book. His skin becomes swollen, being described as puffy like risen dough. Coraline herself behaves much more like a real kid in a real situation that she just can't avoid. Her odds of surviving are greatly stacked against her, with the other mother constantly outmaneuvering her every step of the way. All of this combines to make a really tense story, something much more deathly graphic than the movie could be. And to top it all off, I think this is best shown through the book's illustrations. There's something so serene and otherworldly about the official book art that I can't explain. While ugly, pained, and warped, there remains something ethereal and inviting about it. When I saw this art as a little kid, I always had this weird morbid curiosity towards it. Here was something terrifying and unknowable, but I still had the sensation to see more. The movie couldn't directly copy the book if it wanted to sell to a much bigger audience, and it's in this struggle that we see the film do something rather remarkable. You see, Coraline remains just as dark and surreal as it ever has been, by changing one simple thing. Focus. One way it does this is by emphasizing smaller details that only a visual medium can do, some that you likely would have missed on a first viewing. Let me give you a few examples to show you how subtle Coraline can be. The Coraline doll moves on its own multiple times between shots, stalking Coraline throughout the first half of the movie. The garden is in the shape of the other mother's head. Many of the plants near the garden are carnivorous. The wallpaper's flower designs are actually insects, in both drawing rooms. The other mother's room eventually turning into a spider's web, the insect furniture now providing a whole new context, along with the cobwebs strewn around everywhere. The other mother's clothing becomes darker and angular as the story progresses. One of the ghost children has a mangled, terror-stricken face, most likely caused from the way they died. My favourite example, however, is how the other father foreshadows events from the very start, as if he's warning you but can't outright tell you. These are of many things the movie does to leverage its atmosphere without interfering with the core plot. Detailed background elements are left up for the viewer to uncover. Not only is it good filmmaking practice, it's a great example of what going the extra mile will do for you. While some elements have been replaced, the film takes this as an opportunity to reinforce its own strengths, sawdust and stuffing now replacing blood. This delightful little boy helps Coraline and lives happily ever after. The other father's fate is less gruesome, but becomes much more sympathetic because of it. And he does shit like this. What you have to understand is that in stop motion, every shot has to have continuity. In larger productions, this is something taken extremely seriously. Continuity is so important when telling a story that it's one of the core principles in animation, let alone stop motion. Not everything has to be realistic, but everything must flow to convince you into thinking that this world is real. Everything must slot together, and if something feels misplaced, it can shatter the film's whole illusion immediately. I want to show you this frame right here. It may seem like a pretty bland location, but I really want you to focus on the finer details. See the wardrobe with the clothes that might just look like a doll or a young kid? The picture of the family on the bottom left must have taken hours to include for this singular shot, yet it's there. Even the chair, while simple, has a length and a structure that looks old, quirky, and striking. The ajar door on the left suggests that's where Coraline is heading next, without anything being explicitly said. Now, this level of detail is in every single shot of the fucking movie. It's fucking amazing! The soundtrack produced by Bruno Coulet is not only beautifully made, but also feels very in line within the world of Coraline. Every single stop has been pulled out to create an OST that is ironclad with theming, strong motifs, and symbolic arrangement. The Coraline soundtrack uses leitmotifs to create a clear divide between the music of the real world and the music in the other mother's world. The sound design itself gradually gets more surreal as the story progresses, the harp and female vocals gradually getting submerged by synthesizers and other contemporary instruments. That, or it goes off the fucking deep end? I don't really know how to describe it other than saying it's actual penis music. like it's little bar mitzvah boys getting his weenie cut off with a bunch of dancing folk. Other pieces remain up front and thunderous with large rolling timpanis and atonally plucked strings that layer over each other to make an unsettling wall of sound. Much like the story, the tone can be whimsical and somewhat muted, while immediately flipping into something ominous and schizophrenic. All pieces evoke different emotions, but overall it has this melancholic dreaminess to it that draws a very nice through line between the songs. I'd love to delve more into the music and play some examples, but YouTube is just so competent. So competent, in fact, that I'll probably get content claimed. In other words, for the dumb baba baby bitches listening, the music fits the tone pretty good. When coupled with the previously mentioned aspects, the movie makes for something just as creepy, while being altered enough to remain accessible to many. The main thing to focus on here is that nothing was watered down. It's easy to make a bad adaptation, easier than you think, Hollywood proving this time and time again. When basing a film off a book, you'd hope that the studio would show some respect towards its fans. How unfortunate that this doesn't always work out. But with Coraline, you can tell plenty of love went into this project just from looking at it. Neil Gaiman practically begged Henry Selick to direct this movie, giving him the movie rights for the low fee of nothing. He rejected plenty of other movie offers and practically gave away one of his most successful stories for free. It speaks to just how much trust there must have been for him to do this, and it definitely spoke for how faithful the movie was going to eventually be. I'm not going to argue that the movie shouldn't have been rated a PG, mainly because it's not what I believe, though it's undeniable to say that the movie left a hefty impression on many, and it's this aspect that I find so interesting. And while I've listed a few reasons, there is one more component of Coraline that makes it so unique to its genre, and in my little opinion, something so damn intriguing. Psychological horror is a subgenre that's been popular for a long time. An indicator of psychological horror often revolves around the lack of physical violence. Its prerogative is to raise tension and frighten the viewer in a way that's much more intimate and mentally unsettling. To simplify, psychological horror usually hinges on a fear that provokes a sense of danger, as opposed to the straight-up red-painted bloodbaths you'd see in slashers of the 90s. I think this closely intimate sort of horror is also something that arises in Coraline, which leads me to the one singular aspect that embodies Coraline's psychological horror, the domestic terror known as the Beldam. The home is considered to be a safe haven, a place where the unpredictable nature of the crazy outside world simply melts away into nights of sleep, warmth, and/or being around those that care about you. And I can't think of anything more unnerving than having that illusion shattered before your very eyes. And this is what the Beldam does. It is a stranger that hides in your own home walls, watching you obsessively, garnering intimate details about who you are as a person, and there's something so violating about that. There is no boogeyman. Instead, there is a predator. We see this facade in the Beldam slip occasionally. Her true character is so well hidden that one flash of genuine anger feels icy cold and lethal. There's this uncanny, enigmatic atmosphere to the Beldam, where even at the end of the movie, you aren't quite sure who or what she is. A loving maternal figure slowly transfigures into a cruel and abusive beast. As a kid, seeing this complete flip in personality was so unnatural that for a while I felt fixated on this idea. Parents were these pillars of safety, and having that concept challenged for the first time was jarring and weird. Listen, it's hard to quantify what makes something scary, in the same sense that you can't always explain what makes something funny, and much like humour, your own fears will drastically alter over a lifetime. What you found scary as a 10-year-old probably won't keep you up at night now, which begs the question as to why Coraline still unsettles people 11 years later. I think my answer to this is that Coraline can make children scared, but adults can get disturbed. If there's one thing to take from this video, it's that Coraline is unique in how it works on two distinct levels of fear. It has physical horror that is obtrusive and uncomfortable for younger viewers, while remaining just uncanny and subtle enough to disturb older, more experienced viewers. Coraline isn't just frightening because characters have buttons for eyes, it's also disturbing because we don't know when the button eyes are looking at us. Upon reviewing, what surprised me the most was just how little the horror affected me compared to all those years ago, but that's when I realised the horror itself was only one component of many. Back in the cinema, what I saw was something creepy and unknowable, but what I haven't told you is how genuinely melancholic Coraline feels on top of all that. Coraline is much a story of being careful what you wish for, as well as being a story of childhood loneliness. If this sounds ridiculous, I feel the best way to explain is by putting these thoughts in another light. Coraline Jones is a young girl who doesn't feel noticed, trapped in a grey, timeless landscape, who's often misunderstood and unfulfilled as a result. She would give anything to escape by dreaming of a better life, and if I'm going to be perfectly honest, that singular aspect was something that resonated within me at the time, and I can imagine that it maybe resonated with other people as well. Even now I'm still unsure, but whenever I think of those grey miserable visuals and plastic yellows, I'm not so much scared, but filled with a sense of longing for simpler times. I started making this video because I wanted to burn my feelings and nostalgia of this film into something intelligible, and something that would hopefully resonate with you too. Coraline has the reputation of being a deceptively scary movie, a movie that thrives on YouTube clickbait and long-forgotten threads on Reddit, and to me, I think it deserves to exist beyond its current state. But hey, over the months of making this video, there has been a small resurgence of Coraline, so who knows, maybe people are starting to look back. Either way, for me, it may be a bleak link to the past, but it will always be a relic of my childhood. It will always be a movie that scared, saddened, and fascinated me, something that no other film did quite the same way. It will always be Coraline. Now, I don't know if you could tell, but this is the first video I've made for this channel. If you want to see more, the best way to go about it is probably to share this video around. Make some noise! I know I have. I talked for 15 minutes. Either way, I'm just glad that you stuck around for the end. I would also like to thank Blubfunkle, a really great friend who did the art at the beginning of this video. I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!